The message that ended my engagement wasn't sexual. It wasn't even romantic. It was 4 words from another woman. It's in your court. And what destroyed me wasn't what she wrote. It was that my fiancé didn't tell her no. My name is Mara Ellison. I'm 22, and until that November, I genuinely believed I already knew who I was going to marry. Evan Carter was 21. We'd been together for 3 years, growing up alongside each other through jobs, family problems, birthdays, arguments, and all the little milestones that make you believe you've built something permanent. We got engaged the year before. We weren't perfect, but I thought we were honest. Apparently, I was the honest one. Things started feeling strange around November. At first, I blamed work stress. Evan seemed distracted. He stayed on his phone longer. Sometimes I'd say something and realize he hadn't heard a word. Then he started mentioning a woman named Natalie. I already knew the name. She'd been one of Evan's biggest crushes before we started dating. They had never officially become a couple, but there had always been that unfinished little what if between them. I'd even met her once at a friend's gathering, so when Evan told me they'd started talking again, I didn't make a scene. At first, he was strangely open about it. Natalie sent me the funniest video. Natalie remembers that teacher we hated. Natalie's working near my old neighborhood now. Little things. Then her name started appearing everywhere. We'd talk about Halloween. Natalie loves Halloween. Restaurants. Natalie loves that place. Music. Natalie used to listen to this. Eventually, I started wondering why a woman who supposedly meant nothing suddenly had to exist inside every conversation we had. Then came the phone. Evan had never been attached to it before. Now it lived in his hand, texting while we ate, texting while we watched movies, texting beside me in bed. Whenever I asked who he was talking to, he gave the same answer. Just friends. But his tone had changed. One night, Evan said, "We should watch this new Netflix series. Everyone says it's good." So, we started watching it. I actually liked it. For the next few nights, it became our thing. At least I thought it did. A few days later, Evan left his phone on the couch while grabbing snacks. Natalie's name was on the screen. I know I shouldn't have looked. But by then, my instincts were screaming. I opened the conversation. Natalie had recommended the show. Days earlier, Evan hadn't discovered it. She had. It sounds small. A television show. But standing there with his phone in my hand, I felt strangely humiliated. Something I'd thought belonged to us had actually started with her. Then I scrolled, and the show became the least important thing I found. Evan had been sending Natalie selfies, pictures before work, different shirts. "What do you think?" She'd respond with compliments, teasing comments, sometimes hearts. Then I saw a picture of Evan and me carving pumpkins. I remembered that night perfectly. Pumpkin seeds everywhere, music playing, Evan laughing because mine looked ridiculous. He had photographed us without me noticing, then sent it to Natalie. "Look at us being cute." I stared at that photo. Why did she need access to that? That wasn't catching up. That was Evan opening a window into our relationship and inviting another woman to watch. After that, I noticed everything. He'd put his phone on Do Not Disturb when we were together. He claimed he didn't want distractions. Now I wondered if he simply didn't want Natalie's notifications appearing beside me. Then one night, Evan went to bed early. I stayed on the couch staring at his phone. Eventually, I opened it. There was a new message from Natalie. "I've said how I feel. It's in your court now." My chest tightened. I scrolled upward. Natalie had admitted she still had feelings for him. She told him she'd wondered what would have happened if they'd ever tried being together. And Evan's response? Not. "I'm engaged." Not. "I love Mara." Not. "This needs to stop." He wrote, "That's a lot. I need to figure out what I'm doing here." Then I found something worse. Evan had screenshotted Natalie's confession and sent it to his best friend. Underneath, he wrote, "What do I even do?" That question told me everything. You don't ask what to do when the answer is obvious. You ask when you're considering both options. The next morning, Evan acted completely normal. Coffee? I couldn't even look at him. All day, one thought kept repeating. Was I his future, or just the safer choice? When he came home, I finally said it. We need to talk. His face changed immediately. I told him I'd seen the messages with Natalie. Evan went pale, then came the minimizing. She's just a friend. It's complicated. Nothing happened. I asked why he was sending her selfies, why she knew details about our relationship, why he sent her our pumpkin picture. You're making it sound worse than it is, he said. Then I asked about the message. What's in your court, Evan? Silence. Finally, he admitted Natalie had told him she had feelings. And? I didn't know what to say. You're engaged. I know. So what exactly were you figuring out? He looked away. I didn't think you'd understand. That hurt almost more than the messages. You hid it because hiding it let you keep both of us. He insisted nothing else had happened. I asked him directly. Is there anything you're not telling me? No. But the pause before it was too long. I packed a bag and went to my parents' house. Evan didn't stop me. He just stood there and watched me leave. For the next 2 days, I barely slept. I replayed everything. The phone, the new interests, the unexplained outings, the constant texting. Eventually, one thought formed in my head. Maybe the messages weren't the beginning. Maybe they were only the part I'd finally discovered. So I went back. Evan was waiting inside the apartment. I sat down. This time, I want everything. He started repeating the same story. Old friends, reconnecting, confusion. I stopped him. Did you meet her? His eyes dropped. A few times. Where? Coffee mostly. Mostly. That word sat between us. I asked the question I didn't want answered. Did anything physical happen? Evan froze. Then he nodded. Barely. My hands went cold. What happened? It just happened. I laughed once. Not because it was funny, because sometimes your brain has nowhere else to put the pain. Things don't just happen, Evan. It was only once. He started explaining. He'd been confused. Natalie reminded him of who he'd been before us. He hadn't meant to hurt me. But suddenly, every weird moment made sense. The secrecy hadn't protected me. It protected his ability to explore her while keeping me. I looked at the man I'd planned to marry and realized something terrifying. I didn't know whether he was sorry he'd betrayed me, or sorry I'd found out. Then Evan reached for my hand. I still want to marry you. And that was when I understood how badly he'd misunderstood what he'd actually destroyed. I still want to marry you. For a second, I just stared at Evan. Not because I was moved, because I couldn't understand how he could say that after admitting he'd crossed a line with Natalie. You want to marry me? I said slowly, but you needed time to decide whether you wanted her? His face tightened. Mara, that's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? He rubbed both hands over his face. I got confused. There was that word again. Confused. As if confusion had sent the messages. As if confusion had arranged the coffee meetings. As if confusion had kissed another woman while wearing the ring I'd given him. I felt like I'd lost part of myself, he said. Talking to Natalie reminded me of who I used to be. And apparently, who you used to be needed to be explored behind my back. He flinched. I know I messed up. No, you made choices. Mara, a mistake is forgetting an anniversary. This wasn't one moment. You talked to her for weeks. You hid it. You met her. You lied when I confronted you. Then you admitted the truth only because I kept pushing. He stared at the floor. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was looking at my fiancé. I felt like I was looking at someone negotiating consequences. He kept telling me it had only happened once physically, as if betrayal became smaller when you could count it. He promised he'd block Natalie. He offered counseling. He said he'd give me his passwords. He even said he'd change jobs if that somehow made me feel safer. But every promise sounded desperate because none of them existed before he was caught. If I hadn't checked your phone, I asked, would you have told me? He didn't answer. That was my answer. I stood. I need to leave. His head snapped up. Again? Yes. How long? I don't know. Mara, please. I looked at him. I've spent days wondering whether we can fix this. Have you spent even one day wondering why you were willing to risk me? He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. I packed more clothes and went back to my parents' house. This time, the drive felt different. The first time I'd left, I was terrified of losing him. Now I was starting to wonder whether losing him might actually save me. The next couple of days forced me to think about our relationship in ways I hadn't before. Not just the cheating. Everything. Evan worked part-time and contributed when he could, but I'd always carried more of the financial weight. I never resented that. At least, not before. When his old car became unreliable, I'd helped him replace it. The newer car was technically in my name because his credit wasn't strong enough. When we found our apartment, I was the one who qualified for most of it. I paid the larger share of rent. Utilities usually came from my account. Groceries, too. Whenever Evan was short, I covered it because I thought that's what partners did. We were building a future. Or at least, I thought we were. But sitting in my childhood bedroom, I started seeing those sacrifices differently. I had made his life stable. And while I was building stability, Evan had been testing whether another woman might make him feel more excited. That realization hurt in a completely different way. I wasn't angry because I'd spent money on him. I was angry because he'd treated my commitment like something guaranteed. Like no matter what he explored, I'd still be waiting at home. 3 days later, I returned to the apartment to collect more of my things. Evan was there. The second I walked inside, he rushed toward me. I've been waiting. I noticed. He looked exhausted. His eyes were red and there were takeout containers on the counter. I've been thinking about everything, he said. I walked toward the bedroom. Mara, please listen. I've been listening for weeks. I blocked Natalie. That made me stop. He quickly pulled out his phone. Look, she's blocked everywhere. I didn't take it. You want congratulations? No. I just want you to know I'm serious. You're serious now because I'm leaving. His face fell. I'll do counseling. I started putting clothes into a bag. I'll give you space. I'll do whatever you want. What I wanted was a fiancé who didn't need another woman to realize he loved me. He followed me into the bedroom. I do love you. Maybe. He looked stunned. What does that mean? It means maybe you love me, but love didn't stop you. Mara, people screw up. You didn't screw up once. I turned toward him. You built an entire secret relationship piece by piece. His eyes filled. It wasn't a relationship. You sent her parts of our life. You asked her opinion on your clothes. You met her secretly. You kissed her. What would you call it? He didn't answer. I kept packing. Then the conversation shifted. Not dramatically. Just enough that I noticed. What happens with the apartment? He asked. I looked over my shoulder. What? If you leave. There it was. I can't afford this place alone. I stared at him. He quickly added, I'm not saying that's why I want you here, but it's one of the things you're thinking about. No, I mean, obviously I'm worried. I zipped the bag. And the car? He asked. That one almost made me laugh. The car is in my name. His face changed. Mara, I need that for work. I know. So what are you saying? I'm saying we need to separate everything. His panic was immediate. Wait, you can't just take everything. I'm not taking everything. I'm taking what's legally mine and removing myself from anything I'm financially responsible for. But what am I supposed to do? There was something about that sentence. Not. What are we supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? I looked at him more carefully. You'll figure it out. Mara, I can't cover this rent. Then you'll need a cheaper place. My parents don't have room. Then talk to friends. He stared at me like I'd suddenly become cruel. I thought you loved me. I did. Then how can you leave me with nothing? That sentence settled something inside me. Nothing? He looked confused. You have a job? You have friends. You have choices. You're not being left with nothing. I stepped closer. You're being left without me fixing everything for you. He went silent. And suddenly, I saw our relationship differently. Every time Evan had been short on money, I'd filled the gap. Every time he had a problem, I'd solved it. Every time he felt uncertain, I'd reassured him. Maybe I had become so dependable that he stopped believing I could ever leave. He sat on the edge of the bed. I know I've depended on you. That isn't the problem. Then what is? You depended on me while risking me. His eyes closed. I continued. You wanted the stability I gave you and the excitement Natalie gave you. No. Yes. Mara, that's not fair. Neither was making me your safety net while you figured out whether another woman was more interesting. He stood again. I wasn't using you. Then why are we talking about rent and your car when I'm ending our engagement? That shut him down. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Evan started crying. Not dramatic sobbing. Quietly. I can't imagine my life without you. Once that sentence would have broken me. Now I heard something else beneath it. Fear. Maybe love too. But definitely fear. He reached toward me. I stepped back. Please don't. His hand dropped. I'll change. You might. I mean it. But you don't get to change while keeping me trapped here waiting to see if you mean it. His breathing became shaky. So that's it? I looked down at the engagement ring on his finger. Strange. I'd imagined that ring staying there for decades. Now it looked like evidence from another life. I think it has to be. He shook his head. No. Don't decide this while you're angry. I've never been calmer. That frightened him more. Mara. I spent the last week trying to find a version of this where I could trust you again. I paused. I couldn't. He covered his face. I finished packing. Before leaving, I told him I'd contact the landlord about removing myself from the lease, and we'd arrange the car separately. His head shot up. You're really doing this? Yes. What am I supposed to tell people? For some reason, that question made everything painfully clear. The truth would be a good start. I picked up my bag. Evan followed me to the door. I'll prove it to you, he said. I'll prove I can be better. I turned back. I hope you do. His expression softened slightly. Then I finished. But you don't need to prove it to me anymore. I left. Over the next few days, his messages started coming. At first they were apologies, then promises, then memories, photos from our first year together, screenshots of old conversations, a picture from the night we got engaged. Please don't throw 3 years away. That one almost got me. Almost. Then I remembered that I hadn't thrown anything away. He had. By the end of the week, the messages became more desperate. He couldn't afford the apartment alone. His paycheck wasn't enough. He didn't know what he was going to do about transportation. He asked if I could keep helping with the rent, just temporarily. That was when the final piece clicked. Evan wasn't only grieving me. He was grieving the entire life he'd assumed would continue supporting him. I responded once. You made a choice that changed our future. I won't keep financing the version of that future you destroyed. After that, I stopped replying. 2 nights later, my mother looked through the front window and said quietly, Mara, Evan's outside. I walked toward the window. He was standing beside the curb. No jacket. Phone in his hand. Looking completely defeated. Then my phone lit up. Please come outside. I have nowhere else to go. And for the first time since this started, I realized the hardest part wasn't going to be leaving him. It was refusing to rescue him afterward. When my mother said Evan was outside, My first instinct was still to help him. That scared me more than anything. For 3 years, whenever Evan had a problem, I'd stepped in. Money, transportation, stress, family problems. I was always the person who made things easier. But this wasn't a problem that had happened to him. This was a consequence he'd created. I stepped outside. Evan looked terrible. His hair was messy, his eyes were red, and the second he saw me, he walked toward me. "Mara, please." I stayed near the door. "What are you doing here?" "I needed to see you." "You could have called. You blocked me." "There's a reason for that." His face crumpled slightly. "I know." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said, "I have nowhere else to go." There it was. Not, "I love you." Not, "I understand what I did." I have nowhere else to go. "What happened to the apartment?" "I can't keep it." "And your parents?" "They don't have room." "Friends?" He looked away. "I don't know." Then he stepped closer. "Could I stay with you?" "Just temporarily. Until I figure things out?" I almost couldn't believe he was asking. "You want to stay here?" "Just a few days." "At my parents' house?" I don't know what else to do. For one dangerous second, guilt hit me. This was still Evan, the man I'd loved for 3 years, the man I'd expected to marry. But then I remembered Natalie, the secret coffee meetings, the messages, the selfies, the kiss he'd described as something that just happened. And suddenly, the guilt disappeared. "No." He blinked. "What?" "You can't stay here." "Mara, I'm not asking you to take me back. You're asking me to keep rescuing you. That's not fair." "No, Evan. What's unfair is betraying someone and then expecting them to protect you from what happens afterward." His eyes filled. "I made a mistake." "You made several." "I know." "Then deal with them." He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. Maybe he didn't. I'd spent 3 years being the woman who always found a solution for him. Now I was finally letting him find his own. "I never realized how much I needed you," he whispered. That sentence would have once sounded romantic. Now it sounded like confirmation. "You shouldn't need to lose me to understand my value." He wiped his face. "I still love you." "Maybe you do." "I do. But love without respect isn't enough." He tried one final time. "I'll do anything." I shook my head. "If you really want to change, do it because you don't want to become this person again. Not because you think changing earns me back." He stood there silently. Then I opened the door. "Goodbye, Evan." He didn't follow me. That was the last time I saw him in person. A few days later, he sent another long message asking if maybe, after everything settled down, we could at least be friends. I read it once, then deleted it and blocked the new number. For the first time in months, there was silence. And I hadn't realized how badly I needed silence. No checking phones. No wondering who Evan was texting. No Natalie appearing in conversations. No trying to decide whether someone's explanation matched their behavior. I could breathe again. A couple of weeks passed. I started focusing on work, spending time with friends I'd neglected, and slowly separating my future from the one I'd planned with Evan. Then one afternoon, a friend asked if I'd heard what happened. I hadn't. He hesitated. "Evan went straight to Natalie after you broke up." I felt that familiar sting. Of course he did. Some small part of me had wondered whether he'd meant all those promises about cutting her off. Apparently not. "How long after?" "Pretty much immediately." I laughed quietly. That answered another question I hadn't needed answered. For about 2 weeks, Evan and Natalie apparently got exactly what they'd been wondering about. No secret messages, no fiancé standing in the way, no unfinished "what if." They could finally explore those feelings openly. And then, Natalie ended it. At first, I thought I'd heard wrong. "What?" My friend gave me a strange smile. She went back to her boyfriend. Apparently, Natalie had enjoyed the excitement more than the reality. Evan had treated her like a possible future. Natalie had treated Evan like a temporary escape. 2 weeks. That was roughly how long the relationship lasted. 3 years with me had been risked for something that couldn't survive 14 days in the real world. I expected to feel victorious. Instead, I mostly felt relieved. Because suddenly, I understood something. Natalie hadn't stolen Evan from me. Evan had willingly gambled our relationship because he believed he could explore another possibility without losing the safe one waiting at home. He was wrong. And Natalie returning to her boyfriend wasn't my revenge. My revenge, if you could even call it that, was refusing to still be there when his fantasy collapsed. I heard later that Evan struggled for a while. Without my financial help, he had to give up the apartment. The car situation had to be sorted because it was in my name. He bounced between people while trying to stabilize himself. I didn't celebrate any of that. But I didn't fix it either. That distinction mattered. For years, I'd confused loving someone with making sure they never had to fall. Now I understood that sometimes people need to feel the full weight of their own choices. Looking back, the warning signs seem embarrassingly obvious. The constant texting, the sudden secrecy, the new interests. The way Natalie appeared inside moments that were supposed to belong to us. But I don't blame myself for trusting someone I loved. Trust wasn't my mistake. Evan abusing it was his. What I learned was to pay attention when someone's actions begin contradicting the relationship they claim to value. Evan wanted stability and excitement, commitment and possibility, a fiancé at home and an old crush waiting in the wings. In the end, he lost both. And I gained something I hadn't realized I'd been losing. Myself. Months earlier, I'd thought walking away meant destroying the future I'd spent 3 years building. Now I saw it differently. I hadn't lost my future. I'd stopped giving it to someone who wasn't sure he wanted it. The last thing I ever heard about Evan was that he was trying to get his life back together. I genuinely hope he did. But whether he learned from what happened isn't my responsibility anymore. Natalie chose her path. Evan chose his. And finally, I chose mine. Sometimes I still remember those 4 words. It's in your court. At the time, I thought Natalie had handed Evan a choice between 2 women. But she hadn't. Evan's real choice was between protecting our relationship and risking it to chase a fantasy. He made his choice. Then I made mine. And unlike him, I've never regretted it.